Hello and welcome to the Federal. I have a very special guest today, Dr. Madhu Purushothaman, a pediatrician who's been practicing both India and United States, and he's also a former fellow of Harvard Medical School. Welcome, Dr. Purushothaman. We are in the midst of a pandemic, and we are experiencing various levels of infection. You have been suggesting in your various posts that there needs to be a change in the strategy. What is your current reading? What is the change you're suggesting?
Well, first of all, the question is whether there is a need for a change in strategy. And my answer would be yes, because there is a need. Obviously, because whatever we are doing is not producing the desired results. Things are not going the way that we would like it to. So I think it's time to take a relook and revisit the whole thing and then come up with a different approach and a different strategy that is likely to produce the desired results. So the next question is, if we are going to change the strategy, what would be that? What would be that change? What would be the new approach? I think for that we need to understand the fundamental difference. The difference between infection and disease. Now, what is infection and what is disease? Infection occurs when a germ enters your body. A disease develops when that germ that enters your body causes harm to you. Not all germs that enter your body cause harm to you. So not all infections lead to disease. Let us take the example of tuberculosis. Nearly 40% of India's population is infected with TB. Of this 40%, only 0.005% of the population has the active TB disease. So of 40%, only 0.005% has the disease. So 40% of 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion is a whopping 52 crore people. And out of 52 crore people who have the TB infection, only about 26 lakh people have the disease. So that's the difference between infection and disease. So not everyone with infection manifests with the disease. And this is a very fundamental understanding that we should have. And there are billions and billions of germs that enter our bodies during a lifetime. And not all these germs cause harm to us. In fact, we have many of these germs sitting on our skin, in our hair, in the intestines. They are called commensals. And that's what the doctors prescribe to you. They're called probiotics. Probiotics are nothing but bacteria that are beneficial to you that the doctor puts inside your body.
So, Dr. Madhu, if I understand correctly, what you're trying to say is, instead of this stringent lockdowns and doing other kinds of things, which is basically a kind of prevention from the infection from spreading, you're saying instead of that, instead of a wholesale lockdown of people and trying to keep them behind the doors, you're suggesting let's focus on the disease itself, not on the infection.
That's exactly what I'm getting. So if not everybody who gets the infection is going to develop the disease, why do you have to invest so much of time and energy and resources on halting the spread of the infection to everybody? That's my question.
Yeah, I understand that. But then a question which arises here, sorry to interrupt, the question arises here that I will know about the disease only when I know what level of infection I have, whether it has changed or converted itself into a disease. How do a patient knows that he's infected, but now he's at a stage of disease? How do they find without testing? Or what is the other means of knowing that?
You don't need to know things that we don't need to know things that are of no value to us. It doesn't matter whether a person is infected or not. For all you know, you could be infected, I could be infected, it doesn't matter. What we need to know is whether we have the disease or not. For example, 40% of India's population is infected with TB. That's about 52 crore people. We don't go and test all the entire 52 crore people, all of them, each and every one of them, to find out they have infection or not. That is not the standard process. That is not the standard procedure. No medical textbook or no medical organization recommends that. So the answer to your question is, we don't need to be testing people to find out if they're infected or not, because even if they're infected, it means nothing to us. It has no clinical significance. What really matters to us is whether the person has the disease or not.
So you are recommending selected testing
Absolutely.
not mass testing. So
Absolutely.
testing should be done of those people who have any kind of,
Yes.
if they develop any,
Testing should be done, should be reserved not for people with just symptoms, but people with florid symptoms. And this is nothing new. We've been doing it all the time. During the dengue season, we have people coming in to see the doctors with symptoms, with mild symptoms, and we don't even test them. We just tell them that there is a chance you could be having dengue. But even if you do have dengue, it doesn't matter. Just go home and take rest and take plenty of fluids. If you develop these symptoms or signs A, B, and C by the third day or fourth day, please come back to us. And then we will reevaluate you, and if there's a need, we will test you. So not
isn't
everybody with every infection needs to be tested. So
yeah,
medicine
isn't
is
that
all about
I get your point. Isn't that a very fine call to be made?
it's a
Don't
very
a
fine
person
call,
need
but we've been making it all the time. We've been making it for years. We've been making it for decades. It's nothing new. We've been doing it for dengue. We've been doing it for the flu. So there are people. See, everybody with a flu doesn't get tested. If anybody has a flu-like symptoms, they just stay at home and they take rest and they get better. They go back home. They go back to work. So when we don't test every patient with a flu, when we don't test every patient with dengue, when we don't test every patient with TB, we test only those patients who are at risk for disease, not every patient who has the infection. If we were testing every patient who has infection with the TB infection, we'd be testing more than nearly half the India's population. So when we don't do it for any of these diseases, why are we doing it for corona? Why is the panic button been triggered?
obviously because my own reading is because the disease spreads. It's far more contagious.
No, that
Uh,
shouldn't be the deciding factor because there are infections which are more contagious than
yeah,
coronavirus. The rho factor for coronavirus is 2.5. The
2.5.
rho factor for measles is 12. It's a
Yeah.
lot more contagious.
Right. No, right. If I want to come back to the point about infection, you are saying don't run after infection, treat the disease. Uh, but what happens to those asymptomatic cases which could affect people with comorbidities or people who are in vulnerable age groups? How do we protect them from this?
The answers are already there. Whatever we are doing for the general population, asking people to stay at homes, confining them, isolating them, asking them to wear a mask, reducing their contact with other people, and limiting the exposure. All of what we're doing for the general population is what we have to stop doing for the general population and do it only for the high risk and vulnerable. And we already know who the high risk which the high risk group is, what the high risk group is, and who the vulnerable people are. The data is out there, and that's the group that we have to focus on.
No,
And
but
whatever we're doing for general population, we have to shift it and start
yeah,
doing only vulnerable
yeah,
people.
Dr. Madhu, I would like to interject here. In a country like India, that it's a huge population. That percentage is also huge. See, 20% of India above 60 years. About 30% of Indians are suffering either from hypertension or diabetes. 10% of India have, people have heart conditions. So it makes a very large population. How do we
Yeah.
tackle that?
So there is a silver lining in the drought. India has got one of the youngest populations in the world. In fact, India has got the youngest population in the world. Demographically, we have that's why we call it the demographic dividend. So over 350 million people are in the young age group. So India by far has a lower percentage of elderly in its population compared to Western countries, compared to America, compared to the United States, compared to Canada. So that's a silver lining in the crowd. And that's one of the reasons why the mortality rate is lower compared to other countries. Places like Italy have got a much higher mortality rate because the proportion of elderly the people in that population is much higher.
Yeah. So
But the
there is a
downside is
data
that,
within the
yeah,
mortality rate, 50% are actually people with comorbidities in India. That's the
yeah.
data so far.
One sad thing is that India does have a lot of diabetes and hypertension. If you put diabetes and hypertension together, that's about 30% of the population. About one third of the population has got diabetes and hypertension. And one sad thing is that diabetes and hypertension is increasingly striking people at a young age. Just like heart attack and heart disease, ischemic heart disease used to be a disease of old age and not anymore in India. We have a lot of young people in their 30s and 40s succumbing to ischemic heart disease. So that's a shifting trend that we have to take cognizance of. So this is the people we have to, but it's still not the entire population, but it's still much better, much easier, and makes a lot more sense to focus on this group, even if it's like 20% or 30% and 40%, then the entire population. It does make a lot of difference. And this population, and also people with comorbidities, not all of them are at risk. People with comorbidities who have not kept their comorbidities under control are at risk. If there is a diabetic patient, if that diabetic patient keeps his blood sugar under control, the risk is not as much. If there is a hypertensive patient and he keeps his hypertension under control, the risk is not as much. It is only when we allow these comorbidities to flourish and diabetes, blood sugar to be out of control, hypertension to be the blood pressure to be out of control, the immunity is greatly reduced. And the immunity is greatly reduced, you become a sitting duck for the coronavirus.
Okay, so to sum it up, if I understand you correctly, what you're trying to say is instead of mass testing or running after infection, locking down and doing those kinds of things, instead of a blanket approach, you're saying much more targeted approach.
Absolutely.
You're suggesting that let's go for the diseases. People who are asymptomatic, it is okay. Treat it like any other infection, but when the symptoms become more evident, when the need to go to the doctor arises, then only you go to a doctor or to a hospital, get admitted and take the treatment and protect your people with comorbidities and protect those who are vulnerable age groups. Is that what your overall recommendation?
Exactly. So you got it right. That's exactly what I'm saying. And also, I think we should stop doing everything that the United States is doing, everything that European nations are doing, because what solutions may be suitable for them and what solutions may be applicable to them may not be applicable to us, may not be suitable for us. We are a different country, our demographics are different, our population is different, our immunity levels are different, our population density is different. So I think we should come up with solutions that are indigenous and ingenious and more directed towards our own living conditions. They talk a lot about Make in India. I think when it comes to coronavirus pandemic, the solution, we have to make it in India.
Okay. Now, I'm tempted to ask you a final question. If I understand you correctly, this vulnerable population, these people with comorbidities, for instance, I assume that all that which you're recommending people do take care of themselves, and the rest of the population is free to work. They go about their tasks normally, they function normally. But if actually this happens in practice, really, do I expect some kind of immunity developing, a kind of a herd immunity developing because of this? Is that a possibility?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is again nothing new. We get exposed to germs all the time, all through our lifetime. And I think I often say, I tell my students that the greatest antibiotic in the world is your own immune system. If it weren't for our strong immune system, we would be falling dead in the streets each day. Now, we do have, there's a lot of germ load in India. We are not a very sanitized society. We still have open drainages running through the middle of streets in many towns. We have a lot of mosquito infestation. We do still have, a lot of filth and garbage around us. In spite of all this, we're able to withstand and go on with our lives. I don't think that all this is possible without our own inbuilt and innate immunity. And I think the approach should be to strengthen that immunity, strengthen that innate strength that we already have, further strengthen it, reinforce it, offer the vitamin, offer the immunity boosters, immune boosters to the general population, standardize it, package it, quality check it, make it easily available to the public distribution system. I think strengthening our immunity is going to go a long way in fighting off diseases.
Yeah. Dr. Purushothaman, thank you very much for this perspective. The political class and the administrators have been suggesting that we need to learn to live with corona, and you are giving a certain medical perspective to that. Thank you for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And one thing I'd just like to, finish off by one remark. I've been hearing this quite a bit, that we should learn to live with Corona. I don't think we need to learn to live with Corona. Corona has already learned to live with us. And so have millions of other germs, which are already living inside us. Like I told you, Candida albicans and Lactobacillus and Saccharomyces boulardii. So Corona is just like one of those germs. So millions and millions of them which have already learned to live with us and have decided to live with us and are living happily with us.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.